Tēnā koutou, pangaru me te whanga whānau, ko Phil Truesdale toku ingoa, ko Utatahi Ahau, ko Papanui toku kura. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So I guess it is, is my screen working? I don't think it's working. Sorry guys.
Yep.
I can't click over, oh there we go. That wouldn't work. So that's me. I'm from Christchurch, that's Christchurch, and I teach at Papanui High School. So that's my school as well. I guess the journey of this discussion this morning that I'm hoping to take you on is to sort of look at what we're doing at our school and why we decided we wanted to make a change and how we made that change and what the outcomes sort of were. So we've got these sort of, well that's lagging a bit, sorry. There they come. Okay, so I guess what we've been fortunate to do is be allowed to try something. And what we've done is we've changed our year 11 course quite significantly over the last 2 years. So the idea behind it really is, if we think about, the reason for the change was that we were finding that as teachers, we were putting in much more effort than we felt the students were, which is in some cases really, really needed, but a lot of the time it was really grinding us and bringing us down. What we also found was that we had a lot of students in our courses that they had pre-existing ideas about what they actually were capable of. They were coming in, they were anxious about maths for one, they thought they couldn't do maths, they'd never succeeded in it, they hated it. And so all these ideas sort of were sort of getting to us as well. We also found that our results at level 1 were starting to trend downwards in all of the courses we were running. And it sort of made us think, well, are we actually getting this right? But lastly, and the biggest thing for me was all of our students just wanted to be spoon-fed. They didn't want to sit and think about what they had to do to succeed or what that success actually meant for them. They just wanted to be spoon-fed, and there's a baby there being spoon-fed, but mostly what they wanted to be spoon-fed was credits. And so it became this big credit chase, which didn't sit well with us at all. So we sort of looked at that, and we looked at, again, what we were doing as a department. We were doing some really good and interesting things in our teaching, but mostly it was very traditional. Standing at the whiteboard and doing things, teaching that way, and then doing the task to reinforce what we'd just learned. So it was very traditional. Not bad, just traditional. We also looked at our courses. Our courses that we were running were designed by teachers with what we thought would be best for that group of kids at that particular time. So we had 3 courses, a top, middle, and low band, if you like. And your traditional course was the top one would lead to level 2 and then level 3. The middle one might lead to level 2, but possibly not level 3. And the bottom one was just get them numeracy and get them out, not to do maths again. And so kids were sort of put into that based on what had happened during year 9 and 10. But again, those courses were very designed by teachers. And then the last thing, like streaming and banding was a massive thing that we've always done and still do at junior school. We're fighting that battle at the moment to turn that around. But at the moment, we still stream at year 9 and 10 because the whole school needs to sort of agree how that might work. Otherwise, the timetable becomes a bit hard to manage. So in our junior schools, we're still streaming and banding. Within our bands, in maths, we're trying things to get around some of that, but it's not working as efficiently or as well as we hope. So really what we're focusing on is this year 11. Okay. My talk is about destreaming, and there's a lot of research out there, and I'm not going to click on any of these articles and talk necessarily about any of these articles, but over the last 5 years, we've done a lot of work around the reasons why. Why is this important? So there's things there. You can see that New Zealand article from John Hattie, there's an Australian article, Canadian, Malaysian. Those of you who might know Misbah Sadat in Horowhenua College, there's an article about what she's doing there with destreaming. But in all this sort of research that we'd done and all this stuff we'd been looking at, what we found was things like this. And this is what we found really difficult to cope with when we saw statements like this. While streaming may stem from good intentions, it's clear from research that issues can arise such as negatively affecting a student's self-worth. So going beyond just the maths anxiety, just actually being streamed into a class full stop was really negative on a student's self-worth and their well-being. Other similar sorts of ones, once students hit that stream and potentially the lower streams, they're condemned there forever. They can't get out, they're stuck there. So they have this mindset of that's where they belong. And again, what we see is that these lower level ones become a bit of a dumping ground, especially around behavioural problems or disciplinary problems rather than academic ability necessarily. And so we were really disturbed when we were thinking about this and how we could change it. So I guess what we decided to do was we decided to look at a couple of things. We designed, our ideas around designing a course stemmed from these sorts of things we wanted to do. So we wanted to introduce flipped learning as a side note, really, because we thought there was a good way to move forward. We wanted to individualize all of our pathways for all of our students. So we wanted to get rid of that idea of in this course you'll do these things and you'll have this many credits by the end of the year, because again, that was teacher designed and not necessarily what was needed for each student. And we wanted to combine our classes. And I've tried to sort of show a stream there being frozen. That's my little pun on destreaming, I guess. But the idea was that we wanted to actually give students in all streams or all bands opportunities to actually do what they wanted to do. Okay. Along with that as well, we thought it would be a really good opportunity to be more collaborative as a team. That we could actually, we've all got different expertises and stuff, and we could share that ability amongst more students. And so what that meant was a lot of large classes as well. So we looked at what we were doing, and this was really what we were doing. We were teacher focused. We were setting the paths for students. We were making decisions around what standards they were doing. We were even making decisions around, what timelines they would have to do that standard and when the assessment was. And so we wanted to take that right out of the picture and change it more into a student focused picture. One path for each student, relevant standards to them, something that they could do at their own pace, that they could actually dictate how fast or slow, how much time they needed on a standard, and that we would only assess them when we could all come to an agreement that they were ready for the assessment. The worst thing we wanted to do was put students through assessments they weren't ready for, or they had no hope of passing. So we decided that we would need to change that as well. And of course, teachers were still a part of that, but only as one of those other resources. They weren't the focus around not everything was happening. To achieve that, what we ended up doing was a lot of different bits and pieces. We created a course where we got one of our top band, one of our middle band, and one of our low band classes and put them all at the same time, mixed them all up, had 3 teachers to teach them, and we created a course. We called the course, our courses were called 1-1, 1-2, 1-3. So we called this one Maths 1X, because that X could have been, it was the variable. What it essentially meant was that we could allow students to go on to different things at different times because different teachers would look after those particular things. We decided, because we wanted to do flipped learning, we would create a whole lot of videos. We created a whole lot of planners around what students would need to do, what path they should possibly walk along as they were doing each standard, with suggested timelines around where they could actually, how long we think they might need to spend on that. We put in various checkpoints so that teachers were always in the picture. And all of this sort of came together onto our website that we created as well. I'm not going to click into any of those things unless people want me to later on in the question part, but I'm quite happy to come back and show some of those things if people want to see them. But again, I mean, all that together equated to a lot of difference within what students were doing. To make that work, we had to start in one place, and that was really teaching them about how the course worked. Because this was quite different to what they'd experienced in 9 and 10, we felt that it was unfair just to sort of let them go and have to figure it out themselves. So we were very structured for the first 2-3 weeks around how we actually showed them what this course meant. Okay, so we all decided that we'd do the number topic first, numeric reasoning, and everyone did that. And we actually took them through how to work it. So we went on to our website and we showed them, this is your summary sheet of the way you should be going through this topic. In the first session, this might take 2 or 3 periods. We're going to watch a video. We're going to talk about the video. We're going to rewatch the video. We're going to take some notes. And then we're going to do some activities that are associated with what was on that video. And it took a long time for us to realize that we actually had to do that really, really slowly. We didn't do it very well last year. We did it much better this year. And we took a lot longer actually getting them used to the program and how it worked. And that was, for some students, a little bit difficult because they were like, well, this works really easy. I get all this stuff. And we were sort of trying to say, well, it's more about the philosophy behind the course rather than the material being presented for these first 3 weeks. And once we've done that, we kind of let students go for it. They all have got through numeric reasoning and they've all passed it, every single one of them. There are only 2 students that haven't done that assessment, and that was because we'd talked about their plan and figured out what they needed from the course, and they decided they didn't want to sit it, that they were better off doing other things. But everyone that sat there has passed it, which is really cool. It took some students another week after we let them go to get through that, to be ready for the assessment and to pass it with excellence. It took some students all the way through lockdown to the end of term 2 to get through that standard, but they got through it. So, it really was about working at their pace and what they could cope with. Some of the students have really flown since and have gone and done, I think I'll try not to mention any names. I think one of our students has just done their 5th internal, and so they've got a good number of credits there, and they've also been working on three externals. So, they're going to end the year with a massive amount of credits, which thankfully isn't that normal because we don't really think that's what we want out of this course. But that's what that student wanted to do. Other students, they're working on their externals now. They've done a couple of internals. And so our sort of advice to them when we sat down and made a plan for the year was, you probably want to do 2, maybe 3 internals and a couple of externals. And 4 or 5 standards roughly was about the right sort of, a number of things to achieve at or have a go at. Yeah. So we sort of went through all that. We created all that sort of stuff, and we're into our 2nd year now, and we're near the end of our 2nd year. And that's kind of how we achieved it. Like I said, I think at the end, I'll come back and show you some of these things if you want to see these things. But we might just move on a little bit. So Te Hurangi was more about what the outcomes were. And so over the last 2 years, we've collected a lot of student feedback along the way. We we're aware that we're doing something quite different. And one of the biggest frustrations we've had trying to run this course is from the rest of the school. Other departments saying, oh, it's not working, it doesn't work, you can't do that, the students are struggling. Other students within maths and other courses doing the more traditional sort of thing and sort of saying, well, you know, I've already got 7 credits, why are you only on 2? Or, you know, or this comparison between them has been really, really difficult to deal with. So we wanted to make sure that we were getting the voice of our students within that course to actually hear their opinions on it. And I'll start by saying they weren't all amazingly positive, but a majority of the students were really positive about how it ran. And so these were the sort of things they were saying. You know, being able to manage myself works really well for me, and I'm way more productive than I would be in a regular course. So a student, you know, finding the idea that, you know, going at their own pace worked well for them, not having to meet other people's deadlines. Having the teacher there can help, but being able to do your own thing in your own space is great too. So, you know, we're, as teachers, not redundant fully yet. Being able to take control of my learning, working at my own pace, that isn't in crowded classrooms. You know, one of the big things we had last year, especially, and not quite so much this year, was little breakout spaces that they could go to. One of the things we have done this year differently was one of the spaces we're in is a completely silent space. So if you're working in there, there's no talking, and students often go in there when they really are trying to focus on something. Another student said they really liked that there was no structure. I wasn't sure at first if that was a good thing, but they said that it didn't have structure, because there is a lot of structure, but they were really happy with the fact that it wasn't structured and that they could make their own decisions. They had their own agency over what they were doing. And then, you know, we did have comments like this, that students weren't overly happy with it. You know, they felt there was very little teacher contact. They'd much rather have a teacher teaching the whole time, rather than having to look at videos and work things out for themselves. I will say that the student still did very well within the course. She was in the course last year, and I think she got merits in all of her assessments, and excellences in a couple. So it still worked for her, she just didn't like it. The other thing that we've looked at to try and think about the outcomes is looking at what our results are looking like. So in 2018, before we started this course, we were sitting at a pass rate for level 1 students in maths of around 69%. And, you know, we weren't overly happy with that. We wanted that to be better. In 2019, for all of our students that weren't in this trial course, that were still in their streamed or banded classes, the pass rate was 66%. But in our course that we had not streamed, that students had their own agency, the pass rate had gone up to 89%. So a pretty significant difference there. Also looking at merit and excellence rates, for 2018, before we even tried this, it was at 27%. In the courses that were the courses that were streamed, the merits and excellences last year were at 20%. In the course that we ran that was not streamed, we were at 27. So again, not too different from 2018, but the difference between the two courses is at least a little bit different, a little bit there. Thinking about this year, and given that we're not at the end of the year, but we have been including all of our mock or formative assessments as we go, in 2020, the rate for streamed maths classes of passing is 71. This year, I'm very happy to say we haven't had a single student fail a single assessment. So that was a massive win when we realised that about a month ago. Merit and excellence across the rest of our students in these streamed courses is at this year sitting at 19%, a little down even on what it was the year before. But in this course, with our non-stream stuff, we're sitting at, and I can't quite see that now, 65%. So we've done a lot of things a lot differently this year, in a way, in some ways a lot better. But one of our focuses has been on not letting the students just sit assessments because they feel they can just get through it, but actually trying to up their own expectations of what they can achieve. Those are sort of our outcomes, and where we're sort of hoping to go next with this is that in 2021, next year, all of our level 1 students will be doing this sort of course, completely unstreamed. So they'll be working in bigger classes of around 80 to 90 students with 3 teachers, and they'll all be hopefully creating their own pathways through level 1. We also want to run a trial at level 2. I'm not sure if we've got the okay from up top yet for that one, but hopefully we'll be able to trial that at level 2 at some description. Moving on from there, and again, this is kind of where I'm hoping it heads. It's nothing set in stone yet, but all of our level 1 and 2 maths classes will be unstreamed in 2022, and hopefully, potentially, going across those 2 levels as well. So students in level 1 could be doing level 2 standards if they so choose. And I think Bernie, and I can't remember, is it Bernie Wills in Wellington, is doing something similar to this as well already. And in 2022, we also want to trial that at level 3. In 2023, we're hoping that all senior maths is unstreamed and potentially multi-level as well. But by 2024, that is the aim, to have no senior classes set by level, just to have senior maths where kids are working their way through their programs over a year, 2 years, 3 years even, to get to where they need to go. I guess I've tried to be quite quick because I want to have a discussion as well. But just before we do get to that, this is kind of our whakatauki that we've taken on board for the course. Ko te ahuri o te tamaiti arahia o tātou mahi. Let the uniqueness of the child guide our work. And so that's what we're aiming to do for every single student in that course, is let them be the director of where they're going. A lot of course teacher help and guidance along the way, but letting them really take control of what they're doing is the aim. That's my email. I'm happy to talk to people about it or ask questions via that form, beyond today. But also I'm happy to share things we're doing and looking at those things as well if people so wish to do that. But that's really all I wanted to talk about this morning, and really just open up now for any discussion that there might be or any questions that there might have come through. I haven't been looking at the chat, so Gillian, you might have an idea if there are questions there more so than I.
Yeah, there are certainly some really good questions. Oh, something's getting in my way. Go away. Down the bottom. So one person wanted to know whether anybody else in the school had joined in with your non-streaming.
Any other subjects?
Yeah.
They haven't. We've talked about it a little bit with science about how we might be able to get them on board as well, because ultimately I'd love this to be more than just a maths course. By 2024, the aim is to have just senior maths. Well, it doesn't have to be just maths. It could be a whole lot of other things as well. And so there's small talks with science, but at the moment, there's a fair bit of negativity from other departments, unfortunately.
Wow. I find that really interesting. I don't know if anybody else would like to join in that conversation. If you just unmute, we'll see how many unmute and whether we can get some comments. So if you want to comment, Lisa, you've unmuted.
I find that it's the maths department in our school who wants to stream. Definitely in the junior school, it's only maths, and we don't stream per se. We put 2 classes together and split them by ability, but it still has the same effect on, I'm in the top class or I'm in the bottom class. But further up in the school, it's not really been a discussion, because courses, I think all subjects have at least 2 one more academic and one less academic course. But yeah, in the lower school, it's the maths department who want it streamed and the others don't. Whereas trying to say, why don't we? So this is perfect. A trial of, and somebody's done the trial already. So
I guess the big thing around that, Lisa, like a lot of the department was scared to go this way. But when we presented some research, and like I've got those articles earlier on, so if you can get back to them when this is shared, those articles are really telling, and a lot of the work we're doing around that came from the work I was doing with Kia Kapanaku and cultural responsiveness and all this sort of stuff. And just seeing, especially how our priority learners were being so disadvantaged by this streaming process, not just from year 9, but from all the way back when they start school, is when that pigeonholing starts. And so we're still on a battle to get rid of it at junior school, year 9 and 10, because it's just so difficult with 10 years behind you already of this pigeonholing to start at year 11 with some of these kids.
that's right. Labeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that there is another very big disadvantage for what I have seen. I come from Spain. There is no streaming over there. There is a lot of talk-and-attainer relationships in the class. And then when I came to New Zealand, I was always given the lower ability classes. The head of departments and the people who had been at the school for more years, they got all the more higher ability ones, and then I thought this is a disadvantage as well for the students. They get the less experienced teacher, and the others get the. So I thought there were several disadvantages there versus non-streaming.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I've got Jackie Crawford has her hand up and would like to say something. So can you go now, Jackie?
Yeah, hi, kia ora. This year I have been teaching an integrated class, integrating maths, English and science, and it's supposed to be assessed when you're ready. But quite a few in the class just are not interested, they're not motivated. I think I've probably assessed maybe done 8 individual assessments this year with about 3 or 4 students. 100% pass rate, but I've literally only had 8 things to mark this year from that class, which is a bit disappointing. So how are you motivating the struggling students?
I guess one thing getting some feedback. One thing we've done very early on is we've really just sort of dug in, while we're doing that first topic, we've really dug in with each student about what their aims and what their goals are for the year. And letting them set their goals. I mean, we're not the ones saying you have to make sure you get 5 assessments done this year, but letting them sort of figure out what they want, talking about what they want to do next year or when they leave school, and really just thinking, getting them on board with what their program is. And then we've always got that fallback position of going back to their goals and saying, hey, look, you haven't been working much over the last couple of weeks on you've not made much progress. Do you think you're still going to be meeting your goal here? Because you wanted to do this standard by this time, and so you could do this one and go on to next year and do statistics next year, for instance.
Okay, so it's just having those regular check-ins with them and putting it back onto them.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about if giving them the agency to make that decision very early on, we can always fall back onto that one.
Cool. And just another question, just about the execution of it. How are you hosting it? So we're a Microsoft school. I came to your presentation at conference last year, and I've kind of tried to use the Microsoft Office, whatever it is, to build a website there. I haven't been successful. How could I actually implement it in terms of hosting it and having all the resources available for the students, do you think?
So we've gone for a Google site because we're a Google school. I've no experience with the Microsoft version of things and how that might work, but Google's worked really, really well for us. I guess everything we try and do is on that website. bar, be it, I guess, just not the tracking sheets where all the student results and stuff end up on. Because like when they go through things, they hit a checkpoint, it's all self-marked, and then it gets fed back to spreadsheets. So we've got these masses of spreadsheets that we don't want students to see each other's scores of. But yeah, we've found that the Google stuff has been really fantastic. So our checkpoints are Google Forms. We've got submissions through Google Forms of practice assessments and all this sort of stuff. And I can't speak to the Microsoft one because I don't have any experience with it, how that might work. But if you can get to Google, it's very user-friendly.
Cool. Thank you.
So Caitlin, was it you who was saying that you're quite excited, or you're very excited about the changes? Would you like just to say what you think you might be able to do next year? Or one of the questions that somebody else asked was, what was the reason for people not joining you in this de-streaming idea? So there's two ideas there. So Caitlin, I think if you tell us all about your excitement, I think that's going to be really lovely. I'd love to hear what it is that you think that you're so excited about.
Well, my school at the moment, they're trying to, well, we're in the process of trying to implement an integrated learning program. So, I mean, I'm not quite sure if we're going to be able to do two things, because this is in itself like a large, a different large project. So we're trying to integrate two different curriculum. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we'd be able to do it as well, but I'd love to do something like this in the future. Or, you know, if I wanted to do something like this within my own faculty as a trial like you've done, you know, I'd love to do that. I'd have to get a couple of teachers obviously on board with it. You know, I thought I was going to come here and you were just going to say, oh, you know, we've de-streamed with our juniors and this is my journey, but I'm really surprised and greatly surprised. You know, I really love this idea, and you know, because NCA and all this stuff, you know, it's I love it. Yeah, that's all. But
well, see, yeah. I think we need to talk in a few years, Caitlin, when you've got your trial fully fledged and done, because that's what we end up wanting to do as well. We want to integrate all these other subjects, but it is
and that would be great. But it's just, you know, I don't know what your experience is, where, you know, you're saying that your other curriculum areas, they're fighting a bit. We've got a bit of that too. It's like we had to go and say, oh, well, we want to work with you, and they're like, I don't think that will really work. And then we had to go to this other person. We've been asked to go and find the people we want to work with, but we've been told you have to find someone to work with. So it's a big mess right now, as you can well imagine. You know, there's always so much, you know, difficulty in implementing anything, and, you know, to try to get the ball rolling, it's hard. And then to put another layer on top of it, it's even harder, you know, as you can well imagine. And you know, someone's just messaged me privately and said, what you've now said is a great, it would fit great into integrated learning as well. But, you know, to fit another layer on top of what you already have is obviously
absolutely
even harder. Yeah. But I think it's great.
And I don't think, you know, I think what you're doing, Caitlin, is you're looking at what your next step is and you're making it manageable, because if you try to do too much too quickly, it all falls over. And I think last year we found that lesson trying to do this. We tried to go 100% straight away, and it just fell over. Well, it didn't fall over, but it just made it a lot harder. And so we learned a heck of a lot last year. We made a lot of mistakes last year. But what we did at the start or the end of last year and the start of this year is we looked at those little things that we could change. And as long as teachers are trying to find those little things to change, which is why everyone's here today, you know, then I think we're all doing a great job. So, you know, these things, these big things that we're talking about, they take time. This is not something that has come together quickly. This is 5-6 years worth of thinking and planning, and we're kind of at a stage now where we're at the end of our trial and we can implement it full scale at one level. So, you know, these things are massive changes, and I think we have to bear that in mind when we try to tackle them.
Yep.
Thank you. Rebecca, you wanted to say something?
Yes, there you go. I was going to ask, I think that we have we have Cambridge courses in maths, and I was wondering what your view was, because I think it's going to be impossible to convince some people to combine the two, even though some of us think that destreaming is, especially because we've got quite a high percent of Māori students, and yeah, but the clinging on to the Cambridge, how do you think that would work? Do you think they'd be able to run side by side, or do you have a view on that?
I've not taught in a school that does Cambridge before, so I'm not exactly sure what that all entails. But I know it's a system that I think can sit alongside what you're doing. I don't think you have to necessarily get rid of it. I don't know how to answer that properly without the experience of having used Cambridge before. But I feel, having had the conversations with some students from other schools and other facets of maths, that the Cambridge stuff that they've done was always alongside NCEA.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you could almost just have that extra layer. And I mean, the big advantage of what we're doing here is that students working at their own pace, that they can sort of dictate when they go into one or the other. I mean, we've sort of hit the point now with some students at this time of year where they're no longer actually doing any maths, they're doing other subjects because they've got what they need out of this. And so, you know, it could, I guess, almost sit alongside that and be that extra other thing that they make sure they plan for and do. I hope that helped.
Yeah, can I ask also again, because those really apathetic kids who you have to drag kicking and screaming, is there like a better buy-in for them? I mean, especially with because I just kind of think half of my level 1 class would just sit there doing nothing for weeks on end. Yeah, do they get more involved because they have more agency?
They do. I mean, I think that they get more involved because they've been part of the planning process. They can see where this is all going, rather than, you know, if you do these 5 standards and you get through them, then this is what you can do next year, being told, because they're part of it. There are stages, you know, throughout the year. The end of term 2, for instance, was a really, what's the word I'm looking for? Lackluster time. People were really tired. They were not motivated. We didn't get much from many students at all at that time of year. But we, you know, I think that was the same in other courses as well. What I've kind of always talked to my department about is that this course hasn't changed all of the bad behaviours or all of the bad things, but it's addressing some of them, and some of them are, you know, we're making progress with. So I don't think any student's gone backwards, but yeah, they've all sort of had times where I guess the motivation's not there. And again, you know, we do take a lot of time, because we're not up the front teaching all the time, we do take a lot of time to just sit down with students and talk about what's going on. And that alone is pretty powerful, I guess.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm not sure who sent this, but they're saying they currently share a class with English and Science, and that they're often facilitating English and Science as opposed to just doing maths. So does that person want to unmute and ask Phil any questions about it?
Yeah, hi, sorry, that was me, Jackie again, that's doing that integrated program.
Yeah.
So we've got 3 lines of the timetable. So the students are timetabled in that classroom for 12 hours a week. They're not doing a traditional maths, English or science course. And it's just a case of, when I walk into the classroom, what do I walk into? Where do we go next? But that's the course that I've only done 8 assessments for this year. So swings and roundabouts, I guess.
Yeah. So with one more message here. That's more about the Google site. Is there a chance you share Google site that you created, or at least the structure and some video resources, Phil?
Well, I can jump in there and show you guys around, do a little bit of a tour if you want. I mean, don't judge me too harshly. I'm not a web designer, but you know, I'll show you what it's all about if you like. Just let me try get there.
This was from Evgeny, and perhaps at the end that person might like to come on and say something if they still want something more to say.
Now
Okay, Phil, where are we going?
I'm just going backwards. My screen seems to be lacking. There we go. So this is our website. It's nothing too flash. I mean, it's got a homepage, but all of our standards are here or down here that they go into. And so, for instance, if we go to something like, I don't know, right angle triangles, then it's got just a bit of a page up here, some information, you know, the admin-y stuff around the standard. We've given, and this is a change we made this year, we're given approximate timings because some students were trying to rush through it too quickly, or, you know, they were really dragging the chain going, oh, but I can work at my own pace. Well, here's approximately how long it should take, and that helps with the motivation sometimes. And then we're really lucky. We've and I don't know if you guys know about my study series, but we're using their videos at the moment because we haven't been able to create our own full set of videos. So we're still using mostly those ones. So this is the video that takes them to learning about Pythagoras. And then we've got a whole lot of different things that they can try out and do. Once they feel confident, they jump in and they do a checkpoint. So our checkpoint, for instance, would look like this, just a simple little Google form that they go through and answer. It self-marks, and we get fed the results and they get fed the results. They keep track of their results. We come and talk to them if we think, hey, I noticed you only got 2 out of 10. Let's have a chat about what went wrong. Or we come and we say, hey, awesome work, you got 9 out of 10. Move on to the next video. So they scroll down to the next session, you know, looking at trigonometry. I mean, other than that, it's not much else to it. There's a few links and stuff that we've put in that we think are really good things to be aware of and go into. So all these different things that we're using. All of our admin-y stuff. Oh, that's what I'm trying to do. All of our admin-y stuff is on a Google Classroom, which everyone's involved with. I'm just trying to think. I think it's a number. We implemented some stuff like this. You know, have you got a question that you need to ask a teacher, or you know, here submit your practice assessment that you've tried. You know, it's nothing overly flash, but it's all in one place. And this is the first thing the students go to when they start the day or start the period, and pick up where they left off. The other thing that's probably worth looking at, I think, is this one. Is our summary sheet. So again, this is what they get, and they, from the Google Classroom, they get a version of this. They look through that and it's got all the things. So, you know, watch this video, do the quiz, try this particular task. We've got paper tasks in there as well. Unfortunately, we've had one of the hardest things with this course being online is we've only got about 35% of our kids have devices, which makes it slightly more difficult. But we've got some that we can bring in, around 15 that we can bring in and sort of rotate around students. But we've also got these paper tasks, I guess, to help. But this is where they track their progress through a topic. You know, there's certain points where they have to see a teacher, certain things that they can do down here, and you know, just helps them again keep track and take charge of where they're at each day. And you know, a really nice thing that you can do with your student is say, hey, can I see your tracking sheet? And they'll be working on session 5 and they've only completed up to session 2, and it just reminds them that actually, oh yeah, I need to do this. Or you know, they'll have a date up here that was 4 weeks ago and they're only here, you know, and so you can keep track of where they're going and just remind them that we are watching, I guess. I saw someone raise their hand. Did that person want to?
Oh, yes, I do. Kia ora, Phil. Thanks for your talk to us today. I was just wondering, from a slightly different perspective, you do say that you have 3 teachers in the classroom and that the kids can potentially be working on different things. How do you support beginning teachers with that? I mean, I remember when I was a first year teacher, just being able to stay one step ahead of the kids was a real challenge.
Yeah. So I guess at the moment we're still in our trial phase, and that'll become a very big issue next year. However, the two teachers that I work with, one last year was a second year teacher and one was a third year teacher. So still reasonably early in their careers. And the good thing about the beginning teachers is they were so excited by this and so passionate about it that they just got stuck in. But they also helped with the creation of the website. And by creating the website, you actually schooled yourself up quite a lot in particular topics. And then we have our fallback is that you can go to any teacher and ask any question, but we've also got within the three of us particular standards that we are the expert in, if you like, and manage the things like the assessments and all that sort of stuff. So there's always someone, hopefully, that is the expert with, you know, other decent advice alongside it from the other teachers. Does that answer your question, Karen?
Yeah, thanks for that, Phil.
Cool. Right. I'm just getting wary of time, Gillian. It's 10:50 and there's another session at 11, isn't there?
Yeah, so I'll just, if you share my screen, you've been wonderful, Phil. It's been a really interesting and I think for some people fairly shocking what they've been saying on the chat about your de-streaming the senior classes. So yeah, it's given us all a lot to talk about and think about. And the last comment from someone there was how big the conversation might have to be in order to persuade parents that this is a way that we can usefully teach students a good set of math education. So thank you very much, Phil. I'm sure that as things go on, you might find yourself coming back to us again and telling us how it went when you involved yourself with the second level of the NCEA. I think I'd really like to hear how that went, especially with that the idea of being one step ahead of the students. And I think a lot of people are teaching maths who are not that comfortable. Say if they're a good statistics teacher, so perhaps they're not going to be comfortable if they're also teaching some other sections along there. Well, we'll see what happens when you get to year 13 and whether you manage to get everybody together or you still have two streams. So I look forward to seeing you again about this. I hope that that we will manage somehow that we get you back and we perhaps we'll still be online, who knows, because I really think this is amazing. People all around the country coming to listen to somebody who is actually implementing a change in a school, which most people have not even put their mind to. So thank you very much for that. Thanks, Phil. I'm sure I say thanks from everybody. If everybody could just stay around for a moment. The AMA are really, really impressed by the number of people who are coming to us on these Saturday mornings, and we're dedicated to them. We have another one coming up on Saturday, November the 7th. No details about that yet, but watch the AMA website and you'll get some information. Our usual end of year days, statistics is on the 30th of November and maths and calculus is on the 1st of December. And we are going to be at Auckland University. And I ought to make a shout out to Auckland University for thanking them for allowing you guys and me to use their Zoom and have this sort of day. So thank you very much for that. There's a feedback form and there's a bit.ly URL here. If you could please go there and fill that in. You only need to do it once. If you've been to lots of people by the end of this, you can still do that. And you'll find resources and videos on our website, perhaps more than you think there are. I'm hoping that you'll all go and pick up from what Phil's done and have a look at some of his work. So thank you. Kia ora. I hope that everyone is having a good day. Hope the sun's shining where you are and keep going well.